Welcome to the Nurse Mark Podcast, where we talk about everything health, happiness, cannabis. We'll delve into all aspects of what it means to live a powerful, healthy life. Everything from exercise to nutrition to mindfulness, and how to use cannabis as a means to alleviate some of the most common health issues we face. My motivation and passion come from the fact that I personally had to explore all these areas to deal with lifelong depression and mood disorder. For me, it's personal. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. This is fun. It's good to see you. Okay, we're streaming live on Facebook now.
Okay.
Meagan Pilawski, thank you for joining me on the Nurse Mark live broadcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's wonderful to see you again.
Oh,
I wish it was in person, but I'll take this.
Exactly. This is the best we can do right now. So folks, Meagan and I are both in the same program, master's program in cannabis science, medical cannabis science and therapeutics at the University of Maryland School of Pharmacy. And we're both just having such a great time being in school during COVID times. We actually were supposed to be meeting each other face to face this coming week, or was it this Friday?
Yeah, I think it was this week.
I think it was this Friday for a face-to-face quarterly symposium. But hey, we ain't doing it. So here we are. We're live on Facebook.
Yep.
So I wanted to have a conversation and really have people get a sense of what your experience has been, because you're a nurse. Like me, you're a nurse. And you have a background in oncology, nursing?
Oncology and a lot of palliative care.
And palliative care, okay. Yeah. So now you're in a cannabis program and you're a cannabis advocate. So I love for people to really understand how you got from point A to point C, cannabis.
I like
We're going to go A, B, C. We're going right down the line. So how did you get here? What's your background? So you started out as in nursing and... Yeah.
So I'd say it's pretty multifaceted, how like everything that kind of led to the circumstances that I'm in right now and like the role cannabis plays in my life. But yes, so I did my undergrad, got my bachelor's in nursing from University of South Florida. And then I spent around 5 years working. It was a oncology / our CMO, which that means comfort measure only for any listeners who may not know. So dealt with a lot of end of life issues, things like that. And it was interesting working as a nurse in those two fields specifically, because those are things that you might initially think of as someone who might benefit from cannabis. Is, you know, usually when you think, you know, even if you don't know anything about medical cannabis, you know, like I heard that, you know, if someone with cancer smokes some pot, you know, it might help their nausea. And I'm here to say that that is true. You know, many times, you know, obviously I worked for a large hospital that was receiving some government funding. So, you know, it's a no, cannabis, but it's very interesting how little I kind of studied it in nursing school, and then coming across straight into that particular field. I had a lot of patients where I would routinely catch them eating edibles or something. I was pretty relaxed on it, honestly, as long as they're not like smoking next to an oxygen tank or something like that.
Which we've all had patients like that, or, you know.
Of course, like I know there's definitely some people that would have done that for sure, but thankfully no one
in the tank.
Yes, I know, but you know, people just don't pay attention. But yeah, so I started seeing, how it was helping people, and I started kind of forming the opinion, like, who am I to stop someone from eating this brownie if it is the only thing? We have tried absolutely every antiemetic drug, and it's the only thing that helps them keep down a cracker. Why is everyone so adamantly against it?
Treated, or you're even if you're at end of life, I mean, you want to be able to eat. I mean, eating is something that we derive great pleasure from, and I mean, we need to do it to really to survive. So, you know, there's that, and then there was working through like the kind of the opioid crisis as someone who was managing like morphine and fentanyl drips and stuff. You know,
then started coming things like having to fill out justification forms. And it's like, these people probably have a day left to live. I shouldn't be having to do a ton of paperwork to justify it. There's so much available, and I specifically think of like cannabinoid suppositories or, via like a nebulizer or something, that like how much those patients could benefit from that. And it's right there and we couldn't use it. And it irked me.
What state were you working in at that point?
Florida.
So Florida. Yeah. And was this prior to like the medical cannabis? Well, actually it wouldn't much matter because if you were in a hospital setting or they're probably.
Yeah. I mean, medical cannabis was legalized, but being in that big hospital, that big corporation, it was a big no-no. So, and then I started questioning a little bit more. I want to know why. I want to study this a little bit more because a lot of these physicians I noticed also had fundamental issues with like a lot of the patients using like tea tree oil and things like that for like their nails and stuff. Certain chemos can kind of affect them and make them really brittle. And I'm like, why are people so adamantly against like plant medicine? And it was, at the same time, I'm kind of dealing with progressive MS myself. So I'm giving chemo during the day and then on my days off getting like biologics and, chemotherapeutic drugs myself.
That prior to nursing school, you had that diagnosis or was it, where was it?
I was diagnosed my first week as a nurse.
Oh my gosh.
I had just given birth, and my son was about 3 months old and I took my boards when he was about 6 weeks old. So, I was very tired and I remember saying to the physicians, like, I think something's wrong. Like, I'm so tired that I'm like running into things and like my vision is blurred, and everyone kind of wrote me off and said,
"Oh yeah,
it's new mom fatigue. You just had a baby." And I'm like, okay. And I worked my first 12-hour shift as a nurse, went to bed, and then I woke up and I was having optic neuritis and some tunneling vision, some left-sided paralysis, and some extreme vertigo. Oh, and being a nurse, of course, I'm like, well, let me just wait this out.
Nurses are the worst patients. Like with the last ones
I'm like,
to go
I'll
to the
just drive
ER.
myself to the hospital.
Right,
if it continues, and I'm like,
you have left side paralysis and you can't see, but you're going to drive yourself to the hospital. Typical nurse.
I thought it was fatigue. I'd actually never worked a 12-hour shift before. So, and I was like, okay, it's all just compiling. But obviously it continued and I went to the ER. They initially thought it was a stroke and then they thought it was CNS lymphoma. And then finally I got the MS diagnosis. So after like some steroids and plasma exchange, I went back to work and I tried to just manage it the best I could. And it was really hard to strike that balance for those 5 years. And that's why I crashed and burned. I wanted to pretend during the remitting parts of the disease that I wasn't sick. And I felt that like my 20s and my career and everything I worked for was being stolen from me. So I would lash out almost in a way with my behavior and my viewpoints, particularly with like food and what I was putting in my body. Like I'm reading all this stuff all the time about how diets can help diseases and, working in oncology, and autoimmune diseases. But, I was like, this is the only thing I have control over anymore. And, I was basically bedridden when I wasn't working. When I was working, I was holding onto walls and leaning on my computer on wheels, hiding it very well. And I had a lot of tricky little things that I did. Like I had issues looking up. It would throw me into a bad spell. So the first thing I did, like when I got on my shift, was like lower all my IV pulls and just little tricks like that, because I wanted to pretend it wasn't happening. And I'd get put on one med and then I'd need another med to counteract the side effect. And I think the highest I got between my scheduled and as needed meds was something like 22 medications at 26 years old.
Oh my gosh.
Using a cane on my days off, prisms in my eyes. And then, finally it just got to a point where, like my management intervened about my MS being too bad. And I was really bitter about that for a long time because they felt it was bad enough to like go to like the boards about instead of consulting me. And that took a really long time to get over. And I left, I was in practitioner school and I'm kind of like, what's my next step? And then I'm scrolling Facebook and I see an advertisement for our MCST program that we are now in. Yeah. And I'm like, you know what? I'm such a big advocate. I've seen what it's done for these patients. I approve of it. I have to secretly approve of it. Like, why don't I try? I experimented a little in high school, why don't I try this and give this a try? And I, on a whim, it just felt right. Something felt really right about applying for the program. And I was super ecstatic to get accepted just with like all the impressive backgrounds and everything. And the program in Junction has really helped my healing journey. And I would say like since the beginning of this program, that's right around the time that I really started getting well, because as I was learning, I was applying a lot of these, medicinal uses to myself in a very controlled trial and error where I was journaling everything and finding what worked best for me. Yeah. And in that, as of today, I'm on 0 pharmaceuticals. I'm proud to say I threw my cane away. Yes. I didn't even bring my prisms with me to Arizona. So I'm doing really well. I do have to stay really structured with it. But I think that it's kind of given me an interesting perspective coming from the healthcare side of it and seeing the pushback and I might get some hate for this, but all the Nixon era physicians and how resistant they are.
Well, speaking for myself, defense, that's what they've been trained to believe. Yeah. And so it's really hard to change someone's viewpoint. Once they're stuck on something, it's very difficult. I mean, it's a psychological phenomenon, right? Cognitive dissonance. No matter what you present for evidence, if they have a firmly held belief, they're going to hold on to that no matter what. And and here we are, which is what we're doing, right? We're advocates being in this program.
Absolutely.
I feel we're just being, super trained to be advocates for the legalization at a federal level, which, I hope it's coming soon. And
I hope so too.
Be able to use it, right? So eventually, I absolutely can see insurance paying for medical cannabis as it should. It's a legitimate medicine, right? So I
believe that's how it's structured in Germany, if I'm not mistaken. I believe that that's covered.
Yeah, Germany's pretty progressive. They have a universal healthcare system, which I studied a lot of the universal healthcares around the world, and they're not perfect, but there's a lot more that they accommodate. If it's universal health, they look at a lot of the other alternative medicine routes, treatment routes, and they'll cover it. So I bet you're right that medicinal cannabis is probably covered. Yeah,
and I think it's important to have that facet covered if you're doing a program like that, because if you're in America, with our healthcare system, we don't. Unless it's a lot, it adds up. I'm just going to say it. It's really expensive. If you're in a state when you can't grow your own plants, which there's not a whole lot. Florida is not there yet. And Arizona is not there yet. It adds up, and it sucks to kind of put yourself in debt. But the trade-off I can say personally is that I've never felt as good as I do right now. I've never been probably as financially bad off, but it really raises the question about what's important in life. This is my journey with cannabis I've since gone to tiny living, because it's really, I've really used cannabis as a spiritual tool as well. And
Sherry Tutkus and I, the Green Nurse, are going to do a live show Thursday night on that subject, on spirituality and cannabis.
Yes,
because
it's
there's
super
a huge connection to that. Yes, awesome.
This is a wonderful book. If anyone, it's Cannabis and Spirituality. I'm still about halfway through it, but it raises, I'll save that for your next podcast, but I felt compelled to bring it up because it's something that
Absolutely,
it's
and I'm
really
glad
been
you
a
did.
tool of
Mhm.
like ritual tool to kind of clear my mind, meditate, and I feel just raise my personal vibration. And that's helped
Raises
me
your
maintain
consciousness.
my, exactly.
Yeah.
It's a tool of consciousness. And
Yes.
when you change the way that you look at your cannabis and you don't look at it as I want to get high, something that I spoke
Mhm.
about actually recently on another podcast, is my partner told me once when we first met that he would bless his cannabis before using it.
Uh-huh.
And he did it like in the form of a mantra. And I really liked that. And I liked the way that it shifted my mindset to prepare and be like thankful and have gratitude for using it. So it's usually just in my head or something, but I kind of try and like specifically channel, what is it that I want? Do I just want, to clear my mind? Do I want to use it for meditative purposes? Or is it something with my MS, help me with this and repair DNA, and then I always end by like thanking Mother Gaia and before I use. And another cool point in this book that I read was about having just your own peace and the importance of that. And I guess that pertains more to like couples, I guess, who would both be patients, but it's really good to have your own peace and have your own ritual. Of course, obviously it's fine to share, because it's about setting and intention.
Right.
It's the same with psychedelics.
Same thing. So important to have that intention set to create that space for whatever the experience is going to be.
Yeah.
It can be a very, nailed down intention, or it could be a very open intention, but the importance of setting one, that's really cool. I'm glad you brought that up. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's a very big factor. And I think that, from the folks that I know that are involved in this, a lot of them come at it from a sort of that spiritual viewpoint, really.
Yeah, because that tiny exercise of blessing the cannabis, I think, is what I inadvertently really improved my own mental health with, which I didn't realize that I needed. But when I would sit down and do these blessings beforehand, I would, I'd have to think about what do I want to use it for, and that would help me identify times when I may have just been sitting down to smoke and suppress something and not deal with it and use it, and as I'll use quotes, abuse it in a way. And it helped me draw differences between those times and see patterns within myself and get a little better at only using it, in a way that is beneficial to my vibration and my energy. So, and that's helped a lot. And I didn't go in thinking that little simple exercise would do all that for me. So it's really neat.
It's a connection to the past, right? It's been used as a medicine and as a religious ritual tool for thousands and thousands of years. I mean, that gets handed down through the genetic code, right? It's the epigenetics of it. It just gets passed down through. So I can't ever remember blessing any pharmaceutical experience I ever had.
It's funny because usually before pharmaceuticals, I'll be praying, but it's usually like about like, please don't let the side effects be like deadly this time. Like, and that's what I'm like,
please let me live through this.
It's so different, because I was like one of those people who would get like anaphylaxis to a lot of stuff and get like type 1 hypersensitivity reactions, like really like scary stuff. So usually like it's crazy the difference in mindset, and one interesting thing I think for healthcare providers that I learned in this program, and I don't know about you, but I didn't realize like what such a large percentage of these drugs, especially oncology drugs, are from like naturally derived sources like taxanes and stuff. I didn't. 26% or something, I think was the stat.
Yeah, I think it's even higher than that. Yeah, it's
it's interesting because it made me reflect back on all the times when, basically a lot of the people I was working on were like, no, nothing natural. Like, it's just all, it's hippie stuff, they'd say. And then I'm like, but while they were saying that, we were infusing a naturally derived drug, but they just didn't even know it.
No, nobody knew it. But because it went through the traditional, what is now the traditional pathway, it was okay to be used. And it blows me away to think that in 1937, when cannabis was in effect made illegal, it was the AMA, the American Medical Association, that testified, right? We learned that. They testified in Congress and said, this is crazy. We've used this medicine for years and years. And if you make it illegal, we're not going to be able to continue research, which is the exciting part. And, Congress, for political and racial reasons, ignored the science. Kind of funny that we're in a place now where a lot of people ignore science, isn't it? Some things never change, Meagan. Some things never change.
No, and it's amazing how like a few people in power can do. Yeah. It really is. I mean, that was in everything. It was like you'd see like those women's tinctures that it was like for their time of the month, and it was like cannabis, morphine, like alcohol or something mixed together. And that was over the counter. That was like today's Midol.
Oh yeah.
In a way, so what a huge shift, and I understand like if people are resistant to change, they're resistant to what you don't know. We all are, even when we try not to be. So yeah, I can definitely
it's the human
put myself.
Condition. It's how we're wired. Yeah. We're just wired for that, right? If it worked yesterday, we're going to do the same thing today. It's habit. We're going to do the same thing because deep in our brains, that part that says it kept us alive. Let's do it again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that after all of this and these crazy times, I mean, I feel that there already was a big want, but there was a want and a need from, I think, the general population to start examining more natural based approaches and focusing on wellness instead of healing. Healing is expensive, and then you do it for years, realize you're on 100 meds and realize that nobody actually wants you to heal.
No, it's a business.
And I can, I can say that, and I'm not sorry who I make mad, because I had MS, statistically is the most expensive disease.
Is it?
I don't understand why. Yes. My infusions were $17,000 a month, and they didn't work. And I was sick and had to take a ton of things to counteract that still didn't work. And here I am using cannabis. And I'm not saying that that's for everyone. And I'm not saying that I judge someone for using a disease modifying therapy. I think the most important thing to extrapolate from this is you have to pick what works for you. I think that a lot of these illnesses I think all these illnesses are very real, but I think that you need to give yourself a fighting chance and look at yourself as a temple, a vessel that you're gifted with, and be mindful of what you're putting in your body. And that includes food, includes water, includes cannabis and drugs,
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and you know what? It's all about the endocannabinoid system, right?
Yes,
That's what we're talking about. We're talking about all of those things affect it: exercise, nutrition, external cannabinoids, phytocannabinoids from the plant, all of those things. And so it really is amazing to me that you went from 22 medications to none.
Yeah.
With a very debilitating diagnosis in many cases, right? I mean, you
it was really debilitating, it really it affected my mental health a lot, because, you get in, one, like when you're on like 1,000 milligrams of steroids a day, I'm sure you can understand like why someone might be a little edgy, but that on top of, and people telling you, oh, like so sad, or you're not going to live as long, and hearing that constantly, it really took a toll on my mental health, and I'm very grateful to have gotten out of that pain body cycle. And I knew there was a connection between stress and the way I treated my body, and that it directly correlated to my MS exacerbations, but I did not realize the extent. And I have peeled back all these layers and realized, just how important it is for me to maintain a good energy, because I just have this, I don't look at it as a problem. I look at it now as more of just a little obstacle, maybe a little extra obstacle that maybe someone else doesn't have, but that's okay.
Yeah. And you're actually doing something that can help other people. Like your testimony, your experience with this particular disease and how, your story of actually getting off of those medications, it's amazing. It's going to help other people over time.
Yeah.
The more you share it.
That's my goal.
You share it a lot.
Yeah, that's my goal. And I just, I hope that it resonates with somebody, because I've been at the point where I've made fun of people who use I call them crunchy, naturally derived, approaches towards themselves. I've been there, I've completely had a little bit of an awakening that you could only have by experiencing yourself. So to anyone listening with MS, I know what it's like to be listening to someone like me right now and rolling your eyes and okay, well, it's just that easy. Go vegan and smoke cannabis. And no, it's not that easy. And each person's journey is their own. Right. But don't get bitter about it. You need to maximize the potential that you do have. I've laid in bed, in that hospital bed, and thought that this is my life and it'll never get better. So, but there is hope. So people need to know that.
Here you are. I mean, you look great. You're feeling good, and you're here to help people. You're sharing your story. And you talked about it earlier. You journaled, you had to work to figure out what was going to actually be effective for you. And I think that's something that we need to continually tell people, because, hey, we all want the quick fix. We all want instant gratification. But if you're going to use cannabis as a medicine,
if you're not going to get it,
out of 10, that's not going to be the case.
You're not going to get instant gratification.
Right.
You'll probably pick a product you hate a few times.
Yeah.
And you can't give up, but education is empowerment in this. And I will say that also it's the importance of, I would like to make a comment about just the cannabis industry. I'll focus on Florida for right now. I think that the dispensaries and the vertical ops have a responsibility to make sure that there is at least a minimum amount of training to be a bud tender or dispensary agent. I've seen very dangerous things where people are come in for first time consults and, to a dispensary that I was working at in Florida, and I'm talking about, I'm cannabis naive and I'm on this chemo treatment. And the agent next to me who just asked me if a terpene was an indica or a sativa is trying to sell them RSO because it's the highest, it's one of the most expensive products. And it's not okay. It needs to be treated as a medicine. And until we shift that paradigm in the business world as well, there's going to be a lot of dangerous things going on like that. That was something where I was glad I was standing there and I could intervene, but there needs to be training. It has to be
the proper medicine, right? It has to be the proper route of administration. It has to be the proper amount, the right actual chemovar, right? It's got to be the right chemovar, strain,
Yeah.
We got a comment here from Jane. Jane, thanks for stopping by. And she says it's sad that she sees individuals that have Parkinson's and shake horribly. And if she could use cannabis to help them versus the pharma they're currently using, it would be great. But because nursing homes are federally funded, they're not going to let that happen now. And she's absolutely right. My first job out of nursing school was in a long-term care facility. And so there were a lot of Parkinson's patients. And as we know, there is a lot of research that's been done and is still ongoing around cannabis being effective in helping Parkinson's patients, right?
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of research on the hard to treat symptoms of dementia as well.
Yeah.
And I mean,
that's one that
who better
really
to benefit from those studies? Me as well. As nurses, we're like, and as far as obviously my experience is a little different. I don't have Parkinson's, I have MS, but one of the biggest doses of medicine that I was on prior to my journey was gabapentin. And I'm talking, it was something like 2,400 milligrams a day or something, like a cancer patient dose probably.
Yeah.
And I still had the tremors really bad. And that's one of the first things that I was able to solve, I will say. That's one of the things I was able to actually 100% solve, with cannabis and being mindful of the products that I was using. And also I think knowing that sometimes you may have a month where you just have like a bunch of headaches. You may need to shift your cannabis schedule a little. I have to do that all the time. Like right now, I wake up and I usually do like a 1-hitter of flower. And that really helps me as an appetite stimulant as well. And then I'll do like little 1-hitters throughout the day, every 2 to 3 hours. And then at night, I also had like some PTSD that I dealt with. So I don't know if that helps anyone listening, but I would do a dab to help me fall asleep because I was experiencing a lot of night terrors and very restless and stuff. And then an edible to stay asleep.
Right.
So that's kind of like a day in my life. But that can change.
That's the proper dosing for you.
Yeah.
And again, you're lucid, you're on point, you look great, you look like you feel great. So whatever you're doing is absolutely working for you. And Jane made another comment here. Gabapentin's a huge go-to for the docs at the facility.
It really is. And that's shocking because there are, I believe this was on PubMed. I read this recently. There was a lot of studies about mental health contraindications with gabapentin that we originally did not realize the severity of when this drug came out. I mean, there's a lot of correlation with like suicidal ideations, like arising from as a result of taking that drug. And it's just dangerous,
We have this false sense of security that all of the pharmaceuticals have been through these very rigorous studies and tests. And honestly, they're put through enough to get authorized and then they're put onto the market. But they don't test it on someone with Parkinson's who also is on 10 drugs as well. The gabapentin passed it, but did you do the trial with the person who likely has chronic pain? Did you do it with also maybe taking a long-acting opioid and see how are they synergistically working together? There's interactions between those, right? No, they don't. They absolutely don't. But you know what? That's why it's the practice of medicine. And so everybody's doing the best that they can with the knowledge that they have. And the issue is they're just not accepting cannabis as a medicine the way that it should be yet. And again, that's why we're here. That's why we're talking tonight, because we know that it's an effective medicine and we're here to just share that word and to gather the people together and just make this happen.
Yeah. And, so everyone's on the same page, like there is such a mismatch right now between the states and federal government. And that leaves people really understandably leaves them very confused, and like, what are my rights? What can they do? What can't they do? I better not try it. And, healthcare providers, so I can speak for that. Like we have to take a lot of pharma because like we're like bred to like be scared to even try CBD. And, there's just a lot of things that have to change.
Impact on a job.
Yeah.
A positive THC test could impact your job.
It can. So then a lot of people feel cornered into using pharmaceuticals because of their career. Yeah.
Absolutely. Because it's the safer legal route. And that's the stuff that's the bullshit that we need to get rid of. Honestly, that's that legal impediment to actually using this medicine that has a huge beneficial effect for a lot of people and very, very, very few side effects.
Yeah. And I think one of the most important things that even for physicians or healthcare providers who aren't ready to swallow this pill yet, this cannabis pill, I'd say that the most important thing is to think back to your Hippocratic oath and practice cultural competence and non-judgment and create a safe space so that your patients feel comfortable. Because the fact is, and it's very real, that I know that there are other nurses in my position whose patients are like, I had to use this to be like eat, on this cycle of chemo, but please don't tell my doctor because he's going to write that I'm a drug addict.
Right.
And they're not wrong because I've listened to them speak, and that puts us in bad positions, but more importantly, it puts the patient in a compromising position.
Yes.
So the best you can do is just practice a good bedside manner, and whether or not you personally agree with it, you put other aspects of your personal biases aside,
Right. We're trained.
If you're a physician, you take this oath, and regardless of how you and I might feel about maybe the subject of abortion or something, if we have a patient bleeding in front of us, we're there to get better. We're not there to anything. We're not there to judge. We're not there to give our opinion.
Yes.
We took an oath. So just remember that. And I think that that's the best thing physicians can do, and nurse practitioners in the meantime, until this shift inevitably happens.
Inevitably. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's coming. We're part of it. Let's make it happen. Absolutely. So how you liking school this semester?
Oh gosh, I'm on a live video.
Yeah, I know. I think we should probably just say it's going well. Yeah, it's been an interesting semester.
I'm learning a lot. It's really interesting. And so, for anyone watching, we're currently studying like the kind of negative effects, some of the adverse effects of medical cannabis.
Yeah.
Yes. So, and that's really important to study both sides in any subject, to understand where people are coming from. And it's interesting because we are, I want to word this right, we're experiencing this coursework kind of through the lens of a very skewed bias.
Yes.
I guess
that was a nice way to say it. Yeah.
But regardless, I'm still able to extrapolate a lot.
Yeah. They're presenting material that is designed to, of course, give a negative viewpoint, because that's what we're studying, the negative effects.
Yes. So, but it's important to know that.
Yeah. I found that I really had to work really hard at saying, go in with an open mind, Mark. Go in with an open mind, take in the information and try not to experience my cognitive dissonance, because I'm a pro-cannabis person, right? So if I'm presented with a bunch of negative information, what's my first inclination? I'm going to try to poke holes in it. I'm going to look for it's pretty easy in cannabis research, because in this country, there hasn't been a lot that has been allowed to been done, honestly, in a really rigorous way, I would say. A lot of the studies have a lot of issues with reliability, I would think.
Right. And that, as we've kind of learned, I think that NIDA played more of a role in some of the lack of cannabis research than I initially thought. I think everyone's so quick to blame like the National Institute. So they're the ones that actually have a lot more control.
Right. So they held the purse strings, and their reason for being is to deal with addictive drugs. So of course we've got to have as many as possible.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So what do you think of this? I had Mike Zappy Zappelin on, and we talked about ketamine and about psychedelics. And one of the things we talked about was the fact that cannabis has sort of been the precursor. It's been the one that's sort of broken down the defenses of people starting to think of all of these other plant and medicinal things possibly, actually being good and being able to be used as tools, and sort of moving that whole thing forward. Because I don't know about you, but I see psychedelics all over the place. Like, new research.
There's a lot of, and like, I follow MAPS pretty closely.
I do, do I. Yeah.
For anyone listening, that's the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. I know it's I can say that 5 times fast.
I know.
But, when I learned about that a little, I received the therapy-assisted ketamine infusions.
I have recently had some ketamine experiences myself.
So tell me, let's share experiences. I want to hear yours with the ketamine, because it'll be interesting.
With the ketamine, again, I set an intention, and they were short duration, hour-long sessions. I've done 3. spaced out several weeks apart. And for me, it was a real, just a reset. I'll give you an example. I have been wanting to drink less alcohol, right? Been wanting to drink less, but it's hard. You go out, you see people, you have a cocktail, whatever. I've just known that I have so much on my plate that I would rather not have alcohol in my life at this point because it's a distraction, right? After that first ketamine session, which was, I don't know, 40 days ago, 50 days ago, after that first session, I have not had a drink and I have not had a desire for a drink. I haven't thought about a drink. I've been in situations where everybody else was drinking and I'm fine. But it's sort of been a reset. And I have this, I've been so calm and centered since that point. It was an amazing experience. And how about you?
I'm so happy to hear that. It's as an adjunct to that, I got mine in February and I got 6. And they were twice a week. They were twice a week for 3 weeks, clustered pretty close. And I liked the center. I think it's important to highlight that the center, or again, the setting is important. So make sure if you're picking a clinic like that, be mindful of how important the setting is to them, because that's going to tell you a lot about how important they take it or how seriously they take it and your own experience. It was a lovely room, like incense and like a Buddha statue, and you're laying on a couch and, the IV's just hanging on the bag is just on the wall. Yeah. I meditated. It was wonderful.
Oh my God.
My experience is I felt that things weren't getting to me. My ego wasn't being triggered as much, I guess would be a good way to put it. Example, like someone cuts me off really bad, and I think normally I would have been like, oh my God, and,
I'm from Massachusetts,
now I'm just like,
we're called massholes. We're considered some of the worst drivers, and we're very aggressive like that, Meagan. So I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. And now it just doesn't get to me. I'm like, they're probably late for work or something. And it's like, it switched on these receptors that I think or these pathways that are previously unaccessed. And I've just been able to condition my responses. Whereas I was kind of stuck in a pain body cycle. So felt like a lot of my reactions were negative or why did this happen for this person? Or, and that kind of poor me mindset, which a lot of us get stuck in, it's not cool to talk about when you're saying, you're like, wow, that sucks and you want to change it. But a lot of people do it. And that really helped me. And I felt this kind of warmth, this sense of calm and serenity, like you described. Yeah. And I think that also really probably aided in the transition off of all of those meds as well. I attribute the cannabis to maintaining that, but I think the ketamine and its work with the receptors really helped me get off that large amount of neurological medications. I think I attribute that to, because that would have been a much longer wean than it actually was for me had it not been for the timing of those infusions. So I'm very grateful. I don't have enough good things to say. I'm a huge psilocybin advocate. Setting intention, everybody, no matter what you're doing. Have
a good guide, have a good space.
Yeah. Check out some of MAPS research, or they have an Instagram page and stuff. And then
phenomenal.
Show on Netflix.
I'll make sure that gets into the show notes for sure. Yeah. You want to check out MAPS. They're doing some incredible work in that space. And it really is, it's a brave new world in the mental health space, and having dealt with lifelong depression, and it was not treated well with medications. I'm one of those people that medications just didn't work well. Right. And it wasn't until I figured out a certain litany of nutrition and exercise and meditation and these different tools that I was actually able to get off medication. But the fact of the matter is, medications in the mental health space are just not that effective.
No.
And so
they're not.
There's this new push looking at psychedelics as being the new wave. the new methodology of being able to give people lasting, freedom from that awful depression that they might suffer, or from PTSD and other mental disorders and illnesses. I think
it's a wonderful tool,
fabulous.
like just to help you do the work on your own. It's the kickstart that a lot of us need. And it's not for everyone, but
right.
You just do your research. Like, you said you found all these little things that work for you. I listened to a lot of lives like this, podcasts like this, and I extrapolated what resonated with me and did my own research, and I remain open, and I remain knowing that I don't know what I don't know. So I'm always willing to explore something, and I do my best to not judge it before I at least try and read up or learn a little bit about it. And I think like education is empowerment. It's power, so that's what people need to do.
Yeah. So maybe that's the whole message of our time here together. And that is, this is a new age of empowering the patient with the information that they need to make the decisions in their life as to what's going to work for them.
Yeah. What's going to optimize you?
I had to figure out mine. Totally. And now it's all wide open. Yes.
Woo! Happy for you. Happy for me.
That's
happy for
right.
anyone listening.
Right. We're happy and healthy.
Yes.
That's right. Absolutely. Oh, Meagan, anything you want to add before we wrap it up?
Oh my gosh, we covered a lot.
Yes, we did.
I would just say, for anyone listening, to try that gratitude blessing at least once the next time you smoke. Even if it doesn't have to be fancy, just think about, what do I want to help, and just see if that experience is different for you. Yeah. And if it resonates, I encourage you to run with it. A lot of things start with gratitude.
Absolutely. And that, I can't say enough for that, having that grateful attitude. It's part of my meditation. It's part of my daily meditation, is that I am grateful for something in my life, because again, we're wired with that negative bias, and it can creep up and color our day. So if we start off with that gratitude, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Meagan, thank you so much. I really, really, really appreciate you, and you taking your time and sharing your experience on this podcast, on this live. And you know what? I can't wait to see you face to face at the next symposium, because let's say COVID's going to be, taken care of by then. I'm going to give you a big hug. And that's right. We're going to have a big hug. All right. I can't wait. Thanks
Thank you
so
much for having me.
Thanks for being a guest. Really, really appreciate it. All right, folks. Thanks for joining me, Nurse Mark, and Meagan for our talk, and we'll see you soon.